Hello, ALBW, wherever you are. I'm Pat Esgate, the lead organizer of Van Lister Birthday Week, also known as ALBW, and the host of ALBW Live. And today I'm so excited to let you know that at this year's ALBW, held in 2024, we were able to record 3 of our main events. Number 1, the Helena Whitbread and Ann Choma interview. Number 2, my talk on our search for Ann Lister's final resting place in the Minster. And also just a fabulous interview with Sally Wainwright. Boy, she was so much fun. So I'm very delighted that we can present those to you here on our ALBW YouTube channel. I hope that you have a great time watching them. Unlike our usual ALBW Lives, there is no room for Q&A. However, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them up on ALBW chat. And again, I hope that we'll see you in Halifax next year and that you can join the throngs. This year, we had women from 25 different countries. It is truly a transformational event, and I hope to see you there. Enjoy.
Hello. Can you hear me? I haven't got a very loud voice, so I'm just checking that you can all hear me. Because I hate it when I've been talking for about 5 minutes and somebody at the back goes, "Speak up!" Because then I go,
Speak up, Sally.
Sorry.
Okay, Sally, I want to start with a little bit of background of you and Yorkshire. You were born in Huddersfield, so you're Yorkshire born.
Unfortunately. I should have been born in Halifax.
Yay!
But they took my mum to the wrong hospital.
Oh, she did?
Well, somebody took her to the wrong hospital, yeah. Is this, I feel like
Are you okay?
that should be there.
You want to get it a little closer?
Yeah, as long as you can all hear me, that's the... Without me having to shout, because I can't shout.
Can you hear? All right. Both of us are working with weird mics today. So, when did you first start creating stories? Was it when you were a child?
Yeah. I mean, I think all children create stories. And I think children are, as we know, that children are very creative. Children write and draw and make stuff up and play.
Yes.
And I guess I just never grew out of it.
Lucky you.
No, like literally.
Yeah.
Me and my sister used to draw strip cartoons, which is, it's visual and it's dialogue actually. It's not. That's what appealed to me, was you didn't have to bother with all the boring descriptions of hills and things like that. You could just visuals, dialogue. That was all that mattered. And I think when we used to write plays together, me and Diane, and she grew up. I think she did it for a while after she got bored with it to humour me. And I just never got bored with it. I always thought it was just really exciting to make people, to invent people and then make them speak. And I literally never grew out of it. So.
Did your parents support you? Did they?
Oh no, they didn't know. It was like our secret. It was it was our secret. It was a play. It was play. It was us playing.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been something you would.
Yeah.
Bother your parents with.
Okay. So you didn't put on plays for them or anything like that?
No, we didn't. We didn't. I think we thought we'd leave that to other people. The acting.
Or perhaps to the telly. You were a telly fan when you were a kid, right?
Oh, huge, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've said this to you before, Pat, so do
Yeah, it's okay.
shut me up if I'm repeating myself. My family were all great readers. My mum and dad and my sister were huge readers, and I really wasn't. And to the point where I now think I'm a bit dyslexic. I tend to, get to the bottom of a page and realise I haven't actually taken any of it in, and I have to go back and again and repeat. And I think watched telly because I knew stories were important and I loved stories.
Right.
So I would watch telly obsessively and not read.
Right. And I remember you telling me that Coronation Street was an important program in your family living room or wherever you had the TV, right?
Yeah.
And you, as you grew older, that was sort of a goal for you to be involved in that, right?
Yeah, because my mum was I've realised the older I've got how big an influence my mum had on me from a young age, which she's passionate about stories. She's a great reader. She listened to The Archers, which stood me in good stead later in life. It was on all the time, The Archers, and I never listened to it. Do you know what The Archers is?
Yeah, since you told me about it, yes, I've looked into it.
And she was a great Coronation Street fan, and she loved story, and she was very articulate about story. It wasn't like she was no way was she a couch potato. She was very analytical of what the stories were. She was very analytical of character. She used to talk about it in a very analytical way.
So she talked to you about, did you have conversations with her about that?
Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. And I think that rubbed off on me. And so I used to sort of kind of watch it in the same vein, that you weren't just watching it, you were analysing it.
Yeah.
Or that was part of the pleasure of watching it, was analysing it.
Yeah. You've talked about how you've always had dialogue in your head, right? I mean, that started early on, kind of hearing the characters and having them come full form to you. Was that true when you were young?
I think, again, it does go back to drawing strip cartoons,
okay.
where it's a visual medium and the only literary bit is actually dialogue.
Right.
If you can call it literary when it's...
No, it's true, yeah.
And I think that... I think I moved on from that to writing. Me and Dan were writing plays before I'd actually seen the play written down.
Oh, wow.
So I was writing the character's name and then the dialogue before I'd actually seen how a play was written down.
Wow.
So I don't know why we decided to do that. I don't know how we came upon that. Maybe we had seen a play written down and I just can't remember that.
Yeah.
But we both kind of enjoyed the dialogue-y bit because it seemed the most alive bit. It's the bit that involved people.
Yes.
Creating people.
Yes. Yeah.
And expecting, someone else to come along and be these people.
Right.
Even though we did read them to each other, yes, as if we performed. We didn't perform to our parents, but we did read them out to each other.
Okay, I was just kind of curious, because as a kid, we used to do that. We'd create little things, and then we had a certain night every week when we'd do that kind of stuff. But it's interesting that you kind of kept that between you and your sister.
Yeah.
Now, you've said that, like most people, as you grew up in the area, your big dream was getting out of the area, right?
Leaving Halifax, yeah.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I mean that seems really weird to me now, but yeah.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, like a lot of people, you want to go to London, and you think where you live is the back of beyond, and you don't yet know that Anne Lister used to live over there.
Right. We're going to get into, because there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about, what you knew about the area.
Yeah.
We might as well do it now. So were you aware of Anne Lister at that point, or was Shibden Hall just sort of this old building?
No, I think I've always been aware of her, but not in a tangible way. When we were little, right from being tiny, my dad would take us up to Shibden. Well, both my parents would, but my dad particularly loved Shibden Hall.
What did he love about it?
Well, he was a keen sort of amateur historian, and he loved the hall. So we would go, and the big hope was that you'd have to go around the hall, but then you might get to go on the boat,
Yeah.
But I always loved the hall as well. My sister didn't. For her, that was the boring bit. For me, I know this sounds like romantic now and clever in retrospect, but I'm sure it is true. I always felt odd affinity with the hall. I loved the hall.
Yeah.
I loved museums. I was, a really odd child. But I did love Shibden, and we went there a lot. So I was very familiar with it. So you'd go and you'd know exactly which hall the rooms were, and you went around them all again.
Wow.
Because that's what you did when you went to Shibden. You went in this room first, and then that room, and then you went upstairs. And I was always fascinated by, when you go into, if you go into the wing where the red room is.
Yes.
And you don't go into the red room, you go straight ahead.
Yes.
To where the staircase up the tower is.
Yes.
And that's a glass panel.
Yes.
And then there's a glass panel on the side as well.
Yes.
Oops, sorry. And I was always fascinated, first of all, looking in. I didn't know that was the tower as a child. I just always remember seeing the chair with the ram's head on, and I thought it was a devil. And in this,
As one does, yeah.
and in this window, which I now realise may have been one of the closets that Anne Lister put in for Aunt Anne and Uncle and Dad in 1936. And I think it was like a dressing room, and I remember seeing these sort of patent leather footman's shoes in there, and I always was fascinated by these footman's shoes because they were huge. They looked about that long.
Wow.
You know, when I was about
Right,
6.
or they seemed that way, yeah.
And I was always fascinated. I don't know if it was because they were behind these glass panels and they were a bit, you weren't allowed in because there was something secret going on. But I always remember being fascinated by that. And just the whole atmosphere of the place. I remember going there once with my mum when I was, you know, at that age, and her saying, "Oh, isn't it wonderful? It feels like they've just popped out and we're sneaking around in their house." Yeah. And it also, you know, Shibden still feels a bit like that. Shame they've done that to the Edwardian bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
But top hat, didn't really wear a top hat. Don't know why you put a top hat on bed, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The top hat is a problem. It is.
But yeah. Sorry, what was the question?
It's okay. Well, I'll give you the next one. How about the Brontes? Did you go out to Haworth?
Yeah, the same, exactly the same. We used to go to Haworth.
Yeah.
Not quite the same. Shibden there was something absolutely magical about Shibden.
Right.
Whereas Haworth, the parsonage was always a bit scary. Because I'd go in, I remember going in the dining room with my mum and my sister, again at a similar age. And I remember my mum saying, "Oh, look, that's the settee where Emily died." And my sister said, "Let's go." So it was Haworth, the parsonage at Haworth always had a very different atmosphere to Shibden.
Yeah.
Shibden was always magical to me, Shibden,
Yeah,
right
well,
from an early age. And and Lister, we were talking about when did I first hear about her. I remember as a teenager talking to my dad about Shibden and saying, "Oh, I'd love to write a book about Shibden, I'd love to write something about Shibden." And that woman, that picture, that woman over there on the wall, and he kind of didn't hang on.
Wow.
And didn't know why, but obviously I do know.
Yeah. And yes, you do. And so do we, as a matter of fact.
So I think you kind of, she was referred to as somebody who'd owned it, but there was just never a fuss made around her at all, ever.
Wow.
It was never. There was never any information about her. And I think at some point, like I was about 18, 19, I realised that she was gay, and I can't remember now why I worked that out.
Right.
There may have been a reference in the guidebook.
Right. So at the time...
and that intrigued me, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was impossible to find out anything about her at all. It was really hard to find out anything about her.
Yeah, buried.
So that would have been when I was 18, 19, that would have been about when I was... that would have been about 1982, 1983.
Okay.
So it's before Helena published anything.
Yeah. So yeah, right. Got it.
So, I obviously Phyllis Ramsden and the other lady, whose name I can't remember.
Muriel Green.
Oh, Muriel Green.
Well, not Muriel Green. The woman who Phyllis Ramsden worked with.
Oh, Phyllis Ramsden.
Anyway, I just, I didn't know how to find out anything about it. I had no idea that the diaries were in the archives in the library.
Wow.
I mean, there was just nothing. There was literally nothing to indicate how you could.
So when you went into Shibden Hall at that point, it was just sort of, this was the family home of the Listers.
Yeah, and it was all decorated in different styles, which I kind of appreciate now, that it wasn't just all dedicated to Anne Lister, which is why I'm sad that they've changed the Edwardian bedroom, because that was a nod to the later Listers. It was a nod to John Lister.
Oh, wow. Which one of the bedrooms was that?
It's the one where there's the red bed now with the top hat.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And the nursery next door, which we now know was the tent room.
Yeah.
I've just called it the nursery. It used to be decorated like an Edwardian nursery, which is odd because there were never any children in Shibden at that time. But it was just more a nod to how old the house is, and how many different generations have lived there, and how many different kinds of people have lived there through those generations.
Right.
And then, of course, the folk museum at the back was built in the 1950s.
Right.
And that is an extraordinary thing, because it was designed by a Norwegian museum curator who'd... Sorry?
They evidently know who it is. Oh, Norway. Oh, okay. We have a Norway cheering section up here.
And it was a new concept to build folk museums to show different aspects of life at that time.
Right.
So the backyard wasn't like that in Anne Lister's time, or indeed any other Lister's time. It was built as a folk museum. And it was very much a concept that was done in the 1950s.
Oh.
And I grew up with, as a child I used to go there and think it was magical. It was genuine, like the Crispin Inn was in Halifax. It wasn't there, but they moved all the bits and pieces of the Crispin Inn to Shibden.
Right.
To create the Crispin Inn there. And as a child, that was just magical. That's the fabulous thing about Shibden. It is like stepping back in time.
Yeah.
You do genuinely feel as close as you can to stepping back in time.
Yeah.
Of all the museums in all the world that I've ever been to, and not been to that many, but of all the museums I have ever been to, Shibden is by far the most magical in terms of you do really feel transported.
Yes. Yes, you do. It has the minute, I think almost everybody here who came to Halifax after seeing Gentleman Jack stepping into Shibden Hall is a big deal.
It's a huge deal, and understand. It's a huge deal because everybody here is, a huge Anne Lister acolyte. But it's a huge deal anyway. It's a huge deal irrespective of Anne Lister. The fabric of the building is so impregnated with stuff and history. Yeah. It is truly magical, that place.
I love those stained glass windows that came from, I guess, a priory or something with the little owls.
Yeah, the glass predates Shibden itself, so the glass comes from when the churches were all smashed open.
Right, when they got rid of the...
Which doesn't predate Shibden. But anyway, the glass, apparently, I can't remember anything. The glass apparently was acquired from a church being
torn down after, there was a time when all the Catholic churches and the places where the monks lived, etc., they were all torn down.
Yeah, but that was after Shibden was built.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandy.
We'll do that now.
Let's get you out of Halifax. So you moved down to, you went to uni, right?
Yeah.
Where did you go?
York.
In York, okay.
Yeah.
And oh, right. I read some really interesting things. Didn't you write a play in New York about?
Yeah, I did. I wrote a play called Hanging On, which I did the degree was in 9 parts, and one of the parts you could do an independent paper. So I asked if I could write a play, and they said, well, you can, but we'll only decide if it's worthy of academic merit after you've written it, not before.
Oh, well, okay then, yeah.
So I wrote the play, and I had to put on a production of it as well. And we also took it to the Edinburgh Festival. And they gave me a first for it, which was great. Because that was the first time I thought, I can do this.
Yeah, right.
No, it was a real vote of confidence that not only had I had to prove that I could write a play, but then to get a first for it. It was the only first I did get.
It worked in any way.
Yeah.
So then you moved off to London.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And was your goal at that time to try to write for telly, or was it just getting to London?
Oh yeah, completely. I decided I wanted to write for telly when I was 13. And it never kind of went away. I was also very good at drawing and painting, and people thought that's what I was going to do. That I was going to be an artist of some sort.
Yeah.
And retrospectively, I was never going to be an artist. Because the writing was still very private. It was still kind of not a dirty secret, but a bit akin to a dirty secret.
Yeah. Was that a feeling? Was it like that because you weren't sure it was good enough? You didn't want to show it to people?
No, I was never worried it wasn't good enough.
Not our Sally.
I think it's because writing is so personal. Yeah. I think I was scared of, you're scared of exposing yourself and revealing yourself and that kind of thing. And I think it was more that, and it was more like a juicy secret that I really loved doing this.
Yeah.
That, it's so exciting. There must be something wrong with it.
Yeah.
And then I got really, when I was about 16, 17, I started reading plays. And I got really into a writer called Barry Keefe. And I started really trying to write like Barry Keefe. And I started to realise that people did make a living out of it.
Right.
It wasn't just other people who made a living out of it.
Right.
It was, it was people. It was, working class people also
Right.
were celebrated playwrights. So by the time I got to university, I was thinking about trying to write things that I could put on.
Interesting. So you left York and you went to London, and you became a bus driver. And you and I have that in common, by the way.
Well, you've been a bus driver?
Yeah.
When?
When I was in college.
Really?
Yeah.
What, big double deckers?
Yeah, great big long bus. Yeah. For the university. And then I went and drove a cab afterwards. So, I was always in that driving thing. Anyway.
Cool.
So you moved to London and you got a job on Coronation Street, right?
No. Who's shouting now?
It's Norway again.
All right. All right, great. It wasn't that simple.
Of course not. Tell us.
I was driving buses for about 18 months, and I got an agent from doing the play in Edinburgh.
Which
I was
right,
lucky. I was very lucky to get an agent.
Yeah.
That young, I was like 22 and I had an agent, so that was a bit crazy.
Wow.
And the agent rang me up and said, "Do you want to try the Archers?" And I was like, "Oh my God." My mum gave me a crash course because she'd always listened to the Archers, so she gave me a crash course on who everybody was.
Good.
And because they wanted me to write a trial script, so I wrote a trial script with my mum.
Wow.
And then they took me on and gave me a job on the writing team. And then I got asked to write Emmerdale, which you've probably never heard of.
Right, yeah.
Which is another agricultural soap. And it was in the Archers' contract that you couldn't write another agricultural soap at the same time. They were the only two agricultural soaps that ever existed. So
very competitive, those
agricultural I was keen to get
soaps.
into telly, even though I knew Emmerdale was big shit. So I went off to write Emmerdale. And then I got sacked from Emmerdale. And then I went back to the Archers and I got sacked off the Archers. Then my agent got me back on the Archers. And then I got in at Granada.
Oh my God.
And I left the Archers. And that's when, Granada was great at that time. This was like about 1991. And they made they had a huge amount of content. Everybody wanted to write Coronation Street, so everybody wanted to get in at Granada. And I wrote loads of shows with them for years and years. You started off shadowing people. And they had a real system for encouraging people and bringing people along. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky. There were people like Russell Davies were there then.
Wow.
Frank Cottrell Boyce.
Wow.
Paul Abbott. There was Kay Mellor. There was like a real gang of us who really went on to have really good careers. And it was all because of Granada.
Was it Kay Mellor that told you that you should leave after 5 years?
Yeah.
Is that,
yeah.
Interesting. And you did?
I did, yeah. I was lucky because the Braithwaites took off and I could
Tell me, so let me, just to fill everybody else in here that doesn't know British TV, so you, your first program was At Home with the Braithwaites, which
my first original program, yeah.
Your first original one. And how did that happen? How did you wind up getting that gig?
It's like most things. It was like a mad combination of weird events. It's never that straightforward. I'd kind of done really well at Granada. I'd got onto Coronation Street. I'd written loads. It was a time in my life when I was like writing 5 shows at once. But you're not writing a whole show. You're writing one episode of Corrie. You're writing another episode of Mario's. You're writing one episode of Spring Hill. You're writing one episode of Children's Ward. You're writing one episode. So you're working on 5 different shows, but you're only responsible for 1 or 2 episodes.
Oh wow!
Unlike when you write, an 8-part Gentleman Jack.
Right.
And then I finally got asked to write Corrie, which was the holy grail at the time. It was like nobody ever left. So there were never any vacancies.
There was never any room.
So to get asked to write it was a huge big deal.
Yeah.
And I was working with a couple of people, Tony Wood and Carolyn Reynolds, who were execs on Corrie. And Tony asked me to write, I'd shown him an early version of The Braithwaites, and he commissioned it as a half-hour sitcom.
Oh.
So I wrote a half-hour sitcom. And then he left and Carolyn took over and she said, I want you to write it as an hour-long drama, an hour-long comedy drama. So I did. And And it was happening at the same time as the lottery started in this country. And the story at the time was Alison Braithwaite got a load of money because she got a bill from British Telecom crediting her account with £38 million.
Oh my God.
And she tried to ring them up to tell them that they'd made a mistake, but of course nobody answered the phone. And so she desperately tries to do the right thing, ringing him up, being put through, press this button if you want to do this, press this button if you want to do that. And eventually she just gave up and kept the money. And then the lottery happened, and they said, if you make this, that they've won the money on the lottery, we can put it out on the same night as... Oh no, it was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, it coincided with that. And then the guy who ran ITV at the time turned it down, because he said, why did he turn it? Oh, he just didn't get it. And David Lidderman at ITV, who's worked at Granada, apparently rang him up and said, just fucking commission it. And he was very powerful, David. And Nick did commission it. So it was like a weird series of things he couldn't predict about how it actually got on screen. Yeah. And then it was weirdly successful. It did really well, the Braithwaites.
As a matter of fact, let's see, it got 9 nominations, including 2 BAFTAs, and your first solo writing nomination for Best Writing, which is a pretty big deal, right?
But we never won anything. I remember Linda Bellingham saying we're always the bridesmaid and never the bride at the awards.
Well, you did win one thing. It was the
TV Quick Award.
Thank you.
It was a TV Quick Award, and it was this little plastic thing. And the last I heard, nobody knew where it was. It was on a shelf at YTV, and then it went missing. So somebody probably just put it in the bin, not realising what it was.
So you wound up, a lot of the themes that you write about throughout your career showed up there, the complex family dynamics, social issues, sexuality, class, etc., and that sort of just do it attitude that so many of your characters display. You also had an out gay character, and this is in 2000. Did you get any heat for that?
No, because we'd had the first lesbian kiss on Brookside.
Ooh, okay.
A few years before that. So Virginia wasn't that big of a deal.
All right.
She was kind of the most interesting character in the Braithwaites. She was comedy. I think it was the first time there'd been a comedy gay character.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On telly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So this show centers on a middle-aged woman, and I am not going to ask you why you write about so many strong women. I'm just going to thank you for it, because that's the way the world should be.
I agree. I think it's really odd that I'm still getting thanked and congratulated on that. That it's not the norm. That it's it's still like, oh, there's a strong, complex woman at the centre of this, and it's like, why is that still a novelty?
Why is that weird? Right. But thank you for pushing it forward. I
do it because I want to, not because it's. I mean,
Right, because it's how you see the world.
Completely, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I had a question written down here. What is it about middle-aged Northern/Yorkshire women that provides so much inspiration?
I think middle-aged is... I think I've tended to write characters who are approximately the same age as me. Oh, really? And I think that's why when I wrote the Braithwaites, I was like more in Virginia's head than I was in Alison's. When I wrote Alison, I thought I was writing for a woman. I wrote the Braithwaites, I started writing the Braithwaites when I was about 20.
Okay.
In various forms.
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, Amanda, who played Alison, used to get cross because she thought I was writing better stuff for Virginia than I was for her. And I was. And it's because when I started inventing it, I was more like the stupid student age.
Okay, got it.
Than I was... to me, Alison was an older woman. She was 40. When it got greenlit, I was 35. So I was like, she's old.
The good old days, yeah.
And then when I, sort of graduated through writing things like The Amazing Mrs. Pritchard, Bonkers, and Unforgiven was slightly different.
We'll get there.
And then when I got onto things like, I suppose coming more forward to things like Last Tango, that was great because I could write about, it was very much about my mum. It was very much my mum's story, so it was easy to write Celia and Alan. And by that time, I was more like Gillian and Caroline's age.
Oh,
so I was writing better for them than I was. So Derek used to get cross with me because I was writing more for Caroline and Gillian than I was for him.
Yeah.
But I think I've tended to write about women my own age, and that's what I'm doing now with Riot Women, which is the show I'm just about to start to go into production with.
Right.
Which sadly I can't. I'd love to talk about it more. I said to Pat last night, they've not announced the cast yet.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you who's in the cast, and I really wish I could because it's amazing.
Well, we're going to touch on that a little bit more towards the end, but yes, which is very exciting. So you...
And I was just going to say that they're all women in their 60s, which
Yes.
I'm 60.
Yeah.
So
Is there anything about those characters, now that you're 60, is there anything when you look back on those characters, those 60-year-old characters you were writing at that time, that you might have changed in some way?
Yeah, of course, yeah, because it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody I talk to, same age as me, you just don't feel 60, you still feel like... 25. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel about like 30.
I'm in the 40s someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's odd, isn't it? You're 60 and you think, that doesn't really compute.
Yeah. It goes by fast.
Yeah.
So so you did not write the last 4 episodes of the Braithwaites?
No, because I think that was the 4th series, and
Right.
got commissioned to write Sparkhouse for the BBC. So it was, I mean, that's what happens when a series goes on and on. If it's popular and they want more and more of it, and you want to do something else, they will continue the franchise with other people. You know, it's just the way it goes.
Yeah. So following the Braithwaites, you did a few things, but they didn't quite pan out, right? I mean, after that big initial success with your first original program,
Yeah.
what kind of things were you working on?
So I wrote Sparkhouse for the BBC, which was a 3-part drama. And yeah, it didn't do very well, and I was really like, shocked, because the Braithwaites had been so successful. I thought, that's what happens.
That's simple.
And it was a bit of a shock to realise it kind of didn't.
Yeah.
And then I did a couple of things that were quite successful. I did the Wife of Bath's Tale in the Chaucer season for BBC One, and The Taming of the Shrew in the Shakespeare season.
Oh.
And then I wrote The Amazing Mrs. Pritchard and Bonkers, both of which got really shit reviews and nobody watched.
Did they were they Yorkshire-based shows?
The Amazing Mrs. Pritchard was, and Bonkers was set in a sort of Never Never Land.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they did really badly. But it's sobering, you know, it makes you appreciate when... I was spoiled by the success of the Braithwaites.
Of course.
So now I don't take anything for granted. I mean, I think I've told you this, when we were filming the first series of Happy Valley, I remember Sarah saying, God, I hope people get this. And now it seems bizarre, you know, amazing, because the huge success it's that we would be thinking like that, but you're always thinking, God, what if people just don't like it and they don't watch it and we'll get panned in the press, you know.
Well, you know, following up with this in terms of, you know, that sort of period that things didn't quite hit, I was wondering if it changed how you were looking at what you were going to write about. Did it make you want to stay away from Yorkshire? Did it make you want to come back to writing about Yorkshire?
No, I just kind of soldiered on because I kind of felt it was what I was meant to do, and I was still getting commissioned to write things, even though they weren't, you know, people were still giving me enough rope to hang myself with. And then what changed for me was somebody tried to sue me about Bonkers, a drama I'd written. It was very erroneous claim. It was very spurious and done in very bad faith by someone who subsequently we discovered had clinical borderline personality disorder.
Oh, wow.
But she had enough money to get it into the court system.
Wow.
And I had to get legal representation. It cost a lot of money. It was quite shocking to think that someone thought I'd done something illegal. I was being accused of plagiarism.
Yeah, of course you were.
And I hadn't. I mean, it transpired that she'd written a play called Bonkers that was absolutely nothing like my TV version of Bonkers. And she'd found all these... Apparently, to prove plagiarism, you have to find 20 similarities. And she'd found similarities like the word "the" is used on this page. It was literally that crazy, and she was crazy. And And we did eventually bat it away, but it was after, you know, quite a lot of heartache and expense and dealing with very posh lawyers in London.
Wow.
Who were amazing. You know, that was a bit of a learning curve.
Well, they
But it put me into a
won.
very dark place. And when I was in that dark place, I got the idea to write Unforgiven, which is the first time I worked with Saran.
Wow.
And, oh no, it's the second time I worked with Saran, but the first time she was in a drama I wrote called Dead Clever, and I wrote it. I was commissioned to write it, but I didn't get involved in production, so I never even met her. And then, and it was the first time I'd seen her, because I didn't watch Corrie after I finished writing it, because I couldn't face watching it when I wasn't involved anymore. So I knew Saran had been big in that, but I didn't really know who she was. But then I saw her in Dead Clever, and I thought, oh my God, she'd be amazing to play the lead in Unforgiven. And I wrote Unforgiven in that dark place I was when this person was trying to sue me.
Oh, wow.
Because I thought, what's it like to be accused of something awful? You consider to be a criminal. You're trapped in a room, because I was lying in my office thinking, shit, what's going on? You know, like, and Ruth's in prison for 15 years.
Sure, yeah.
So I turned my little personal drama into this much deeper drama for Ruth.
Write what you know.
So out of that really horrible experience came Unforgiven, and that was when things kind of really changed for me. That got fabulous reviews. It got a lot of awards. And since then, really, that's when my career went on this quite...
On the uphill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had 2 BAFTA noms, 2 RTS noms, 1 for writing, and 1 win in Best Drama.
Yeah,
for Royal Television Society.
Yeah. And I think Saran got nominated as well for Best Actress.
What was it?
Saran got a couple of nominations as
Oh,
well.
she did? Oh, wow.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things I found interesting about Unforgiven is that the Yorkshire countryside is almost like a character itself. That the bleak, it was really, there was a lot of bleakness and that kind of thing. Was that intentional for you when you brought it in?
I think the thing is, when you film up there, we filmed at a house called Whitehead where Tabitha, is Tabitha here? Yeah, it was Tabitha's house. So me and Tabitha were at school together.
Huh?
And so I used to go to the house a lot. So it was very part of my visual cultural reference. And it's just so wonderful up there. The landscape is so, you can't not see it, you know.
Right.
And so when we filmed up there, I think it was inevitable that we would use that landscape in the language of the show.
Yes.
So I think it wasn't like we thought, oh, it'll be a character. It was just, it became an inevitable part of it.
Right.
I think once you've seen it, you start doing it more and more. I mean, I'm hoping to use that house again for the riot women. Who knows? And it is to do with the landscape. It's right on the edge of the border between Yorkshire and Lancashire, and it's the Pennine, you know, the Pennine Way goes right through it, and it's very remote and it's very powerful. You know, it's a very powerful landscape.
Yes. And beautiful.
So
at
if you
the same
film it,
time.
it's going to have an impact on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So that's Unforgiven in 2009, but this is, now you are, excuse me, vaulted into the busiest part of your career. We've got, and we're going to talk about these shows briefly, Scott and Bailey in 2011, Last Tango in 2012, Happy Valley in 2014, To Walk Invisible in 2016. So all of those things going on in that 5-year period, which is...
And multiple series of them as well.
And yes, in multiple series of them, which is just phenomenal. I mean, I'm not sure how you kept all of that straight. But the first one of those was Scott and Bailey. And the only reason Scott and Bailey wasn't on the video at the very beginning is because it doesn't actually take place in Yorkshire, you told me, because it's over in, where is it, in Manchester? No,
yeah,
in Manchester.
Yeah.
And that, excuse me, went on to run 5 seasons. Which is amazing. It got, let's see, it did get a win, the Crime Thriller Award for Amanda Bullmore, 5 nominations for Best Drama Series, and 2 nominations for Best Writing. So obviously, you know, your writing credits are very, very strong as you're coming into this. So Saran Jones is once again one of your characters. Did you write that with her in mind?
Yeah, because she invented it. She created it. It
Really?
was her idea.
Really?
Yeah, her and Sally Lindsay, who used to work on Corrie together. I think they've left. So Saran played Karen and Sally played somebody else. And Shelley, that's right. and they were just best mates and they still are. They're still really good buddies. And they came up with this idea of wanting to be Cagney and Lacey in Manchester.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And because I'd worked with Saran on Unforgiven, they asked me to write the script. So yeah, it was Saran's idea. She created it.
Wow, I had no
Sorry,
idea.
I think me and Diane, the police advisor, got created by credits, but they got some other credit. That's because we came up with the show as it existed, whereas they had this vague concept of Cagney and Lacey in Manchester. But they were involved. They were very involved in the early conversations about what it was going to be.
You know, when I first watched that over in the States, after watching Gentleman Jack, then I dove into everything I could find that you had written, because my first reaction to Gentleman Jack, quite frankly, is as much as I loved the show and was transformed like so many other people, it was your writing. And I watched it the second time to follow the beats, because you're such a masterful writer. It's just amazing what you can do in so few words, really. So I've just always been fascinated by that. But when I got to Scott and Bailey, what amazed me is the three leads are women, and there's absolutely no weirdness with the men cops about that. That they're actually being, that their boss is a woman. Yeah. And in the States, that never happens. Yeah. If there's a female cop character, there's 10 male cop characters that are all doing, this and whatever in the background. So really a wonderful thing. But was that considered daring at all, to have three women as the leads in a cop show in the UK at that time? Was there anything else like that?
I don't think it was particularly. I think American culture is very different to British culture. I know we think we're very similar, and actually we're really not.
No, not at all.
And I think that's an area where British telly is a lot more forward-footed.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't need men to be the gun-toting ones.
Right.
I think the big USP for Scott and Bailey, I was working with a police advisor called Diane Taylor, who I asked to share the creator by credit because she put so much into it. The USP was that I had a real police officer. She was a detective inspector. She was retired. Yeah. But I had a real detective inspector there all the time I was writing it.
Wow.
And it was the first time, I think a lot of, Lisa's my police advisor now on Happy Valley, was here tonight. And you've told me this, Lisa, that a lot of cop shows, they invite the police advisor on after the scripts are written.
Oh, wow.
And it's too late.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to unpick the script completely. Broadchurch, which was very big in this country, the story of Broadchurch could never have happened if the police had followed the first 50 actions, which is what happens when a murder happens. There are 50 actions that must be followed. If the police in Broadchurch had followed the first 50 actions, they'd have solved that in about 3 minutes. So what was different about Scott and Bailey was that we put police procedure first. And we showed that a murder investigation team isn't an eccentric inspector and one sergeant sidekick.
Right.
It's 30 people.
Wow.
And Scott and Bailey are just 2 of 30 people.
Yes.
Who Jill is the boss of.
Yes.
Or Mrs. Priestley is the boss of. And I think that was the USP of Scott and Bailey rather than the fact that it was... but it was the first time I got the comment about men being weak.
Somebody
in
said
my
that
dramas.
To you? Really?
And the men weren't weak in that. They were perfectly interesting. They just weren't centre stage. So, a few commentators perceived that as me writing weak men rather than just not realising that it's just that they weren't centre stage.
Were they men commentators that said that?
Can't remember.
Yeah.
Probably.
Interesting. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
So, Scott and Bailey, and then next, now you're really taking off. Because the next thing that happens in 2012 is Last Tango in Halifax, which, God bless you. What a wonderful show.
And that, before we get into it, goes on to have 17 nominations, 8 BAFTAs, 4 wins, 3 of which were BAFTAs, and that included Best Drama, Best Supporting Actress for Sarah Lancashire, and Best Writer for you.
Yeah.
So 2 points of difference from the more recent work at that point. Yorkshire looks far less bleak. It falls more into that all creatures great and small feel that we Americans like about Yorkshire.
Well, it's a
right?
romance, it's going to look different.
Exactly, yeah. And you return to a family-based drama in that one. So was it difficult juggling your time between the 2 shows? Because you were still writing for Scott and Bailey, right?
Yeah, so I had my children in 1997 and 1999, and that was at the point at which I realised I couldn't write more than 1 show at once. And I think when Last Tango got greenlit, I'd already written like 3 series of Scott and Bailey, and we'd got Amelia, as well as playing Jill, is a writer, and she'd started writing a couple of episodes.
Right.
So she took over as sort of showrunner as well.
Oh, wow.
At that point.
Oh.
So I never actually was writing both at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So it was a really good handover because Amelia's brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't juggling more than 1 show. I mean, you still kind of get a bit obsessed about post-production and whether you still want it to be good, you still want it to, to ping out and be the best it can be.
Right, of course. And as I think most everybody knows, it's based on your mother and what happened to her late in life.
Yeah.
Meeting an old high school flame.
Yeah.
And they went off and got married.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
It was amazing. It was wonderful. It was great because they were really in love with each other. It was like really genuinely, these 75-year-olds, were they a bit younger than that then? I think they were a bit younger. And they met up so my mum had come down to live with me in Austin in Oxford, and Alec had gone down to live with his daughter Janice and her husband in Northamptonshire, which is adjacent counties. And they agreed to meet up for a cup of tea. They'd got, my sister put her on Friends Reunited, and he was one of the few people who responded. So they agreed to meet up for a cup of tea.
Oh, wow.
And in Woodstock. And they were just like besotted with each other.
Did it happen as quickly as it does in Last Tango in Halifax?
Yeah, it was kind of pretty instant.
Wow.
And we had a couple of conversations that I used verbatim in the show. There was one where Annie and Caroline, Sarah did it really well, where my mum wanted to tell me that they were having sex. And I was like, no, I don't want to know. It's fine, I'm very happy for you, but don't tell me. And I wrote it down verbatim, and it ended up being a scene in the show.
So you did get one other important lesson in Last Tango in Halifax. You learned about the concept of death by lesbian. When you killed off Kate.
Yeah. I got death threats.
Yeah.
Well, I exaggerate. I got 1 death threat. I told Nina that, and she just laughed at me.
Huh? Well, you made up for it, so it's okay. You know, we're better with you now.
Stop mentioning it now.
There's another really interesting thing that happened to you while this was going on.
I genuinely didn't know that was a thing, by the way.
I know.
Also.
Also.
It was really sad that it ended up being the story. We had a big story that was about something else completely, but it involved Timothy West. And then Timothy West dropped out because he got offered a contract on EastEnders. So we had to change the big story completely.
Oh, wow.
And this suggestion came up, not from me, to kill Kate off. And I thought it was a bad idea. But we were desperate.
Well, someone had to die, and it was the lesbian. And
I know.
there you have it.
So I now know that's a really bad thing. And Lister died, by the way.
But we didn't see her
maybe
die.
it's a good thing we didn't get another series.
So while this is happening, you get a big award. You become a Free Woman of Halifax. What exactly does that mean, and what did it mean to you?
I suppose it's an honour, you know, it's a fairly meaningless honour. No, it's not meaningless, it's meaningful, it's very meaningful, but it doesn't actually, you know, you get all these jokes about, oh, you can run your sheep through Halifax. So let's go and find some sheep. But no, we had a really nice evening, it was a really lovely evening, and it was, you know, it's just nice to be recognised as having done something worthy of note.
It's really wonderful that you've been recognized. Yeah, I mean, in so many ways, you've won tons of awards, et cetera, but for Halifax to come out and do that, I thought was really quite lovely. So that's just me. So were you now at the point, or were you getting to a point where you could sort of write what you wanted to with all this success?
I think it was after Happy Valley that happened.
Okay.
I think Happy Valley was a massive turning point. A bit like Unforgiven, but on a different point. Happy Valley was the first time I directed as well, professionally. I'd been directing, I directed at university, been directing in my village in the Cotswolds for years, and then finally got to do it professionally.
Yeah.
I mean, Happy Valley was just a bit of a phenomenon. Which again, you know, as I said, we didn't know it was. You just don't know. You make all the shows you make with the same passion and commitment and obsession, and then one just takes off like that, and it was just
something just
bonkers.
hits. And yours hit in a huge way. So this is the lineup for Happy Valley to date. 32 nominations, 27 wins. And let's see, you won BAFTAs for Best Drama twice, Best Leading Actress for Sarah, and Best Writer.
Twice.
And for the 20... I'm not going to dispute that. I was the one that was watching your show to figure out how you did it. Okay, and the 2024 BAFTAs are coming up in May, and at this point there's 6 noms. Let's see, drama series again, and if you win, that would be twice that Happy Valley won for that.
No, 3 times.
Oh, for
Best drama.
Oh, really? Okay, because I kept trying to find that because I thought you'd said that. And then for writer, if you win this time, it would be 3 times as a writer. Supporting actor, leading actress, supporting actress, and editing. You're up for all of those in May.
And best moment.
Hiya. What's the best moment?
I think it's the scene with Catherine and Tommy in the kitchen.
Yeah, God, yes.
At the end, in episode 6, yeah.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Man, yeah.
If only you knew what it was like filming it. This is the thing about Happy Valley. It's had all this acclaim and attention, and it's always been a fucking nightmare to film. It's like, I didn't film that, Fergus O'Brien did. He shot the last block, and it was in the studio in Manchester.
Oh, wow.
And on the day, everything went wrong, as it always does. The best thing, Happy Valley 2, you know the scene on the bridge? Sorry if you haven't watched it, but there's a scene where Kevin Doyle is going to throw himself off the bridge, and Sarah doesn't save him.
As one doesn't.
We shot that across 3 Sundays, because we could only shoot there because the railway is open during the week, and on Sundays it wasn't open. So we had to shoot that. It took us 3 Sundays to shoot that scene.
Oh my God.
And we were lucky that we got consistently horrible weather across all 3 Sundays. This was going up to Christmas. These were the 3 Sundays before Christmas. The weather was awful. And then on the day, one day particularly, this is everything goes wrong. And you watch the and you think, that's amazing. It's like, if only you knew the pain and misery we went through filming it. One day, Sarah was in a trailer and her back went, so she's crawling around on the trailer floor. And my first assistant, I'm out on the location waiting for her, and the first assistant comes up and says, Sarah's done a backing and she's not coming. But she's going to, anyway. And then the stunt driver turned up with Kevin's BMW, and you can't throw an automatic car into reverse if you're moving forward, which a stunt driver should have known.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, no.
So he fucks the gearbox. And so we haven't got a leading lady, we haven't got a stunt car. So anyway, about an hour later, this car turned up and Sarah crawled out of it saying, I'll do it. And she couldn't walk. She could hardly walk. And then about 3 hours later, we got a replacement stunt vehicle that looked a bit like the one that we'd been using. You remember this, Lisa? And it was like that was the whole story of Happy Valley. It was all like
one thing after another.
Mad, and nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. You see this slick show and all these awards, and it's like it was a nightmare. But it was good. It was fun. We got through. Also, it was really bucketing it down.
Yeah.
And I had about 15 layers on. And I remember the actor says, "You look like a massive bilberry." And I went to the loo and it took me about an hour to get all these layers off. In a tiny little porter cabin loo. Me and Angie, the script editor, we both went at the same time. We took all our layers off. And the wash basin bit was just full of all our clothes while we went in the loo. It was great.
One of those situations where if you fell over on your back, you'd be like a 3-year-old and all that stuff that they can't get up, right? The little turtle thing.
But we got there in the end.
Yeah. So at this point, you're doing, this is crazy, because you're writing the 2 other shows. Your supporting actress in Last Tango, Sarah Lancashire, is also the lead in Happy Valley. Did you write the show with Sarah in mind?
I wrote Happy Valley with Sarah in mind.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't write Last Tango with Sarah in mind.
Right.
But I wrote Happy Valley with Sarah, in mind.
Yeah, she's phenomenal in it, obviously. Just
really.
so amazing.
Extraordinary.
And how did you juggle all of this at the same time with the different things that you were writing? Is it hard for you to... Although you said that early on you were writing different shows at the same time, so...
I think the thing is, I told you last night, I've decided I'm autistic.
Yeah.
I've just had an autistic diagnostic test. I haven't had the results yet. But I'd tell you if I had. And I am obsessive.
Yeah.
And I think when I get into that mode of work, I'm obsessive.
Right.
So, because people think, oh, you must be a workaholic, you must be very well organised. And I'm not well organised at all, I'm just a workaholic.
Right.
Like, me and Tabitha were driving down to Hebden Bridge and I'm going, oh, we're using that house as a location, and we're using that house as like my whole conversation is
It's just...
boring.
Well, what the heck. So,
It's a good job we're talking about me tonight.
So, Happy Valley is a really amazing program that gets into, it's family focused, but it really gets into this sort of dark underbelly of Calderdale. Many things that go on, the mafia and all the rest.
It was based on I saw a documentary called Shed Your Tears and Walk Away.
Oh.
So I was developing Happy Valley because the BBC had asked me to write a sort of Scott and Bailey for them.
Okay.
And I thought, how can I write Scott and Bailey but it be different? So first of all, I thought obviously a uniform constable, sergeant, was an obvious difference. And I was trying to find lots of bits and pieces that would help me create something that was sufficiently different to Scott and Bailey, but that would tick the same kind of boxes. And I saw this documentary by Jez Lewis, a documentary maker, and he grew up in Hebden Bridge. And a lot of his contemporaries and people he was at school with had developed, addictions to alcohol and drugs. And he made the documentary because he'd been to one too many funerals of people he'd grown up with, and it's a really shocking documentary, and it was really about since the decline of industry in the area, the big population that came because of the industry has, nothing. There aren't the jobs, and so a lot of poor mental health. And addiction and that kind of thing has developed. And it was kind of about that. And it made me realise, the problem of drugs in the valley. That's why the police do call it Happy Valley, because of the drugs problem.
Oh, wow.
And then Lisa came on board as the advisor, and she shaped a lot of the show. And it was very much with that theme in mind. that Catherine is somebody who's at the bottom of the pile just mopping up the mess and
Right.
never actually able to change what's causing it.
Yes.
She's just always mopping up the mess at the bottom of the pile.
That's all there is to do, is just try to keep cleaning
Yeah.
up after it, right,
Yeah.
that there's no change. Lisa, would you like to stand up for a second? Because we'd really like to introduce you to the audience. There we go. This is the advisor on Happy Valley. Well done, you.
But that was the great thing, because we were at school together. We met each other when we were 6. We've known each other since we were 6. And so,
Oh, no kidding.
So we had a really close, as I was writing it, I think last week I was ringing Lisa up at like midnight, because she's working on Riot Women as well, because we've got a fabulous police woman in Riot Women as well. So we do work really closely together. We do invent I invent everything with Lisa, very much part of the creative process. So everything that's you see in Happy Valley, and hopefully in Riot Women and the scenes that Holly's in, it's real. It's as real as it can be. I mean, we take a little bit of poetic license now and again, but not much. So it's a great way to work. And I think, again, that's my being a bit autistic. It has to be correct, otherwise.
Well, thank God for that. Yeah, no, because it rings so true. It really is amazing. But I do wonder, do you ever get any pushback from people about Happy Valley in terms of it sort of always being focused on the underbelly? Or do people just kind of look at it as, no, that's our life here, and we carry on?
I've never heard anything negative about it.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as I'm aware, whenever people talk to me about Happy Valley in from here, they're always really, really excited about it.
Yeah, really proud of it. Yeah.
What?
It's softened by the personal relationships with her family.
Yeah.
You can kind of forgive because you get so into the faith. It becomes more real and like just a real experience.
Yeah.
Because the personal experience with the family. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what balances it out. And
Well, I think the character of Catherine, and of course the brilliant way Sarah plays her, is so sympathetic and so admirable. I think that's.
I just realized my friend Sarah Bruton is sitting here in the front, and Sarah's the person who introduced me to Halifax. When I first came over, I was looking for someone to guide me, and she volunteered. And Sarah left the mills at 16. She walked me through Halifax, and she told me a lot about the drugs, crime, the kind of the little mafia that operates here. So it rings very true when I watched Happy Valley. So yeah, amazing. Why the long delay until season 3? The masterful season 3?
Why the long delay?
Yeah.
Well, there's another show.
Yeah. That we're going to get to.
There were a couple of things. One was that I wanted the character of Ryan to be older.
Okay.
And I think the idea was to come back slightly sooner than we did. And that didn't happen because of Gentleman Jack.
Okay.
But then when we did come back, it did feel like exactly the right time. That he was just the right age for us to come back at that time.
Yeah.
So,
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. And it's so interesting because it goes off without a hitch. Let's see, I read that Sarah had her own thoughts about that last scene that...
Yeah, it was, she came up to my house about 2 days before Christmas. And we spent the whole day together just going through the episodes because she felt that it was the big showdown between her and Tommy, and she felt that I hadn't pushed it far enough. And I hadn't, she was right.
Oh, wow.
And it was really useful getting notes from her because nobody knows the script like the actors do. I mean, I was thinking that I've been prepping to direct the first episode of Riot Women and realising how much I don't think through as a writer. I think I do.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think when I write, I do think things through to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you sit down and try and prep the scenes to actually shoot them, and you have to get it down to very specific shots, you realise how much you haven't thought through. And of course, actors have to learn the lines. I don't have to learn the lines, they have to learn the lines. So they have a much more intense knowledge of the script even than I do.
Interesting.
So it was great to get notes from her. I mean, she's very analytical, Sarah, she's very clever. And she came up and we just talked it through, and she just wanted me to push it further than I had.
Wow.
So, whereas I was going, no, it's fine, I don't want to do any more work on this. But I did, and I'm glad she did. It was good to get that.
I'll ask you about Sarah later, but before we move on to your next two projects, when you took on Happy Valley, you let it be known that you wanted to direct, right? That was part of
Yeah,
it?
it was kind of part of the deal. And
Yeah.
Nicola, who I was working with at the time, knew I'd wanted to direct for a while.
And why did that become important to you at that point?
Several reasons. Just a passion to do it. I've always directed, right from university.
Mm.
You know, I do direct in my village where I live, with the amateur group.
Okay.
And so it's all, for me, it's part of the same job. If you write a script, I want to be the one who brings it to life.
Right.
So it's partly that and partly... I've worked with some very good directors, but they are rare. Really good directors are as rare as really good writers and really good actors.
Mm.
You know, there's a lot of people who can do it, but it's middle of the road. Or annoying. And and I felt I'd had my fingers burnt too many times, and I thought, well, I got to thinking, well, I can at least do it as badly as them. So I might as well have the fun of doing it that badly.
Yeah.
And then I was lucky with Happy Valley because it was we decided I'd direct the 4th episode because Eris was going to direct the first block of 3, and then it made sense for Tim to direct either 4 or 5 and 6, and then it made more sense for him to direct 5 and 6 because then he could run into the finale. So it was left for me to direct episode 4. That was the kind of pragmatic decision. And then it just transpired that episode 4 just happened to be a really cracking episode. So I could really get my teeth into it. And again, Sarah really helped me. She was really helpful.
So how did it feel?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was really good.
Yeah.
I remember Sarah was one person, several people said to me, the first 3 days you won't have a clue what's going on. And then after that it'll just click, and that is exactly what happened.
Wow.
And you just find your feet, and you realise... I realised that the actors do like having the writer. They do listen to me. They do respect the fact that you actually know what you're talking about because you invented it. Whereas I think they're used to working with directors who kind of, you know, if they don't know the answer, they'll make it up.
Right.
And they may or may not be right, you know.
Right.
So I quickly realised that the actors do like working with the writer. You know, they're not just blowing smoke up your ass. They do actually mean it.
Well, I have to imagine that they really like working with really great writers. Maybe not so much with people that don't write very well, but I can't imagine that, I mean, your writing is just amazing. And so the next project that you have, you direct the whole thing, and that's To Walk Invisible, right?
Yeah. So but it was only it was a 2-hour drama, so it would that would only ever be directed by one person.
Right.
But it was great to direct that, and I'm really proud of To Walk Invisible. It didn't do very well. It didn't get noticed. It didn't get any awards. It didn't get any reviews even because it went out on New Year's Eve, I think.
I think it was Christmas. Somebody told me that it
had a really poor slot, and I think it was quite niche. It didn't. Jonathan played the Price.
Jonathan Price, right?
Played Patrick, but apart from that, they were all kind of not big names at all, and that was deliberate. I wanted the audience to see them as the Brontes, not as stars.
Right.
And I think that worked against us in that, you know, if Saran had been playing Charlotte,
right,
which would never happen. But if she had, more people would have turned it on.
Right.
I think because they were relatively unknown actors, it didn't get a massive audience. But I did at the time think it was very good prep for Gentleman Jack.
Well,
because it was period.
That's exactly what I said. And this is your first period piece, right? To Walk Invisible?
To Walk Invisible is the first period thing I'd ever written, I think.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting. It was great prep for Gentleman Jack because I was writing about real people.
Yes.
Which is actually quite scary, you know. I remember starting writing for Charlotte. The first time I had to put words into Charlotte Bronte's mouth, it was quite daunting because of who she was. And how dare I make Charlotte Bronte speak?
Yeah.
And I couldn't quite get into her for a long time. so that was quite scary, and it was never scary with Anne Lister because her voice is so present in the diary.
Yes. Yeah.
And it wasn't hard to imitate it from the diary because I was so, you know, knowledgeable about the diary by the time I started writing it that it was relatively easy to put words in her mouth.
Before we're going to move to Gentleman Jack next, but I have a question for you. Where did you come up with the idea of the crowns of fire on the children's head? That is spectacular.
I think it's probably from the juvenilia. I think there's probably something in the juvenilia that gave me the idea to do that. And I don't know where I got it from, but I think it was pretty obvious that it was meant to be like that they're little gods.
Yes.
And that they're inspired.
Yes.
And this is the expression of their genius, even from an early age.
And it comes across loud and clear, even though Tommy Lee Royce comes out of the box as one of the generals, but, you know, whatever. So let us move on to Gentleman Jack. So, and again, more awards. The BAFTA Best Drama in 2020, 12 nominations and 4 wins for Gentleman Jack, which is quite wonderful. We've talked a lot over the last several years about Gentleman Jack and all the granular details of it. But I want to read a little quote from you to just start this part of the discussion. Shortly before Gentleman Jack aired, this following comment appeared in an interview. Wainwright felt jittery about how it would be received. She said, "Because there's a lot of money involved, and you want the broadcaster and the people who put the money in to think it was money well spent, rather than something that disappears without a trace, but also you want people to see it." How did that work out for you? Let's give her a round of applause.
Well, as you know, I sort of mentioned this last night about not getting the 3rd series. It is disappointing that it appeared to do so well.
Yes.
Certainly in this country.
Oh, unbelievable, yeah.
And the BBC did want to go again.
Yeah.
And it was HBO who felt that it hadn't done as well in America.
Yeah.
And they were changing as well. They were changing what their remit was when they got taken over by Warner. And we couldn't do it without them. You know, we couldn't do it without their money.
Yeah.
And I know it's disappointing that we didn't get a 3rd series. I mean, obviously I was as disappointed as anyone. But I was saying to Pat last night that in a way we're lucky it ever got made at all, you know, because Absolutely. It was to make a drama about somebody who's a woman from 1830 who nobody's ever heard of.
Yep.
It was actually quite extraordinary that we got it made at all. And it was only because of Happy Valley. I remember going to see Charlotte Moore, who controls the BBC, and she said, "What do you want to do next?" And I said, "Well, I want to write about this woman you've never heard of." And she knew that because I'd mentioned Anne Lister before, so she knew I had this passion project. And I mentioned Riot Women and another project, and she said, "What do you want to do most?" And I said, "Anne Lister." And she said, "Well, we'll do that then." So, you know, it was because of Happy Valley that I was in a position. I did it on the understanding that I would do Riot Women next.
Yeah.
And that's now happening.
Yeah.
In fact, about this time next year, it'll be on telly, and we might be doing the press launch here, so you need to be here for that.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no problem there.
And then we got HBO on board at this time when so much money was coming in from America, and America was wanting to back our shows. And that's now changed since the strike and since COVID.
Yeah.
And all that.
And
stuff.
Streaming was really the big thing that hit.
Yeah, and people putting so much money into streaming.
Yeah.
And now that's all dissipating. And money isn't coming in the same way anymore, and less stuff is getting, particularly at the moment, very, very little is being greenlit in this country. And what is being greenlit in America since the strike, the big American companies are putting all the money into home productions much more than they are putting it in over here.
Yeah, and unfortunately what they're putting it into over there is stuff that's more like old-fashioned commercial TV, a lot of the edgy, wonderful stuff. Go on.
mannish, male,
Yes.
testosterone, man with guns.
Blow things up. Yeah.
Kids stuff,
Yeah.
children's programs,
Yep.
fantasy.
Yeah.
So, in a way, when Gentleman Jack got commissioned, it was like the optimum moment for it to happen. And I think it wouldn't happen now, and it wouldn't have happened before. So the fact that that show was being offered at that time, at exactly the right moment on the back of Happy Valley,
Yeah.
it was like it couldn't have happened at any other time. So for us to get not just one but two series, I think we have to I feel like I personally have to be grateful for that and not get too wound up that we didn't get the third series.
Yeah.
I think we got two fabulous series.
Yes.
It made the impact it made, and you're never going to get tired of it because it's not going to go on too long.
Yes.
I mean, I would love to have told the whole story. I'd like to have gone up to A Death and Beyond. I'd like to have told the story of what happened to Anne Walker. I'd like to tell the story of a body coming back to Halifax.
Yeah.
I'd like to tell the story of when she was buried in the Minster. I'd have liked to tell the story of what's happened since, where she's been buried in the Minster.
Yes. We'll get there.
But yeah, I think it's sad that we didn't get another series, but I think we also have to be really aware that it's amazing that we got those first two series.
Well, and
actually very unusual.
yes, and thank you for spending your own personal capital on making that happen, because you have, as you know, literally transformed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people around the globe. What have you learned about this in terms of what kind of impact writing can have on the world? Your writing.
It's really overwhelming, because I didn't foresee that. You never foresee anything. You never know how anything's going to be received. You never know how people are going to see shows at all. What struck me, sorry, I keep talking about Riot Women because I really want to talk about it.
We're getting there.
Because I'm so obsessed with it at the moment. But it's one of the things that influenced Riot Women was Rock Follies, which is a show I saw when I was 13, and it had a really powerful effect on me. And I was thinking, what was it about Rock Follies that affected me so deeply? And I think it's because you're 13 and everything affects you deeply.
Yeah.
But it was, what I realised was, it wasn't just like watching a TV show, it was like having an experience. It was like, that wasn't just me staring at a screen, it was something happened to me. And my ambition is to make shows that it isn't just watching telly, it's you actually experience something. And I realised, instead, trying to think, how can I do that with Riot Women? And I realised that's actually what I did with Gentleman Jack.
Yes.
That is what happened with a lot of people, that it was, for them, it was like, and that's pretty overwhelming to think that you've done that without realising that you've done it.
Yeah, because that's exactly what
And
happened.
I'm pleased as well, I'm delighted, it's so amazing being here, at ALBW week, and you feel all the love, it's like, everybody's in such a good mood, everybody's so happy. Yeah. It's really joyous,
Yeah, it's an amazing experience.
And that's all thanks to you, of course.
It's actually because of all the people. I can organize my head off, but if nobody ever comes. And by the way, I forgot to say this in the very beginning. When Sally and I are done talking with Sally, Cheryl and I have a little bit of something we want to tell you about what's going to be happening with ALBW, so don't run away. So we are now ready to talk about Riot Women, your next project. So tell us a little bit about what it's about.
So it's about women of a certain age. As I say, I write about people like myself. But it's about a group of women who are at a certain point in their lives where they're menopausing. They've got all the stresses that happen to us at this age. Elderly parents who need help, who've maybe got dementia. Your kids have grown up, but they still need a bit of pointing in the right direction now and again. Yeah. In my case, your husband decides to fuck off for no good reason. Maybe because you're writing a big drama about a lesbian, I don't know. What else? Oh, you're at the height of your career, so you've got all these people pulling you in all different directions. Or you've not got a job and nobody wants to employ you anymore because you're at that age where suddenly everybody younger than you is getting the jobs.
Yeah.
So it struck me that you get to this point in your life where you think you're at the height of your powers and suddenly you're being pulled in all these directions and you're going through the menopause. And I thought that was worth writing. And you disappear, this is what a lot of women said, they suddenly feel invisible. They suddenly feel like they're being used and abused, everybody takes them for granted and nobody actually sees you, you're just there to solve everybody else's problems. And I thought that was a really fertile thing to write about. So it's about this group of women who form a punk rock band as a reaction against it. They do it for charity, they do it as a charity event. And they realise they actually really enjoy doing this. So they start writing songs about all the stuff that's pissing them off. So we've got this fantastic punk band on board writing the songs.
Oh, no kidding. Great.
So we've got some great songs. We've got this fabulous singer playing one of the characters.
And you don't want to talk about, we can't do that. Yeah.
I was hoping they would have announced the cast before today, and so I could have banged on at length.
Yeah.
But I can't.
I'm sorry about that. Well, there's one favorite that's coming back. No, it's not Saran Jones. So,
however.
Yes.
There's a couple of familiar faces from Gentleman Jack.
Yeah. We'll all love it.
Yeah, maybe.
Is there anything else, because this is your time to talk about it. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about it?
I just want you all to be here next year when we do the premiere.
Yeah.
Including you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait.
And hopefully, they'll be here.
So I have two questions to wrap up with you. What is it about the people and places in Yorkshire that inspires you to write about them?
I don't think it's inspiration as such. I think it's happened kind of by default. I think it's happened like what we were saying about Unforgiven when we shot up at Whitegate Head. It's just that landscape. Why would you not want to film here?
Yeah.
You know, the land. When you grow up here, you kind of don't notice it, and then one day you suddenly do. It's like suddenly realising Anne Lister's been here all this time.
Right.
You suddenly go, oh my God, that is actually amazing.
Yeah.
And I think the landscape had a similar effect on me. And I think I just like writing Yorkshire people now. It's the vernacular. There's a certain comedy, I think, in the Yorkshire lilt that lends itself to good dialogue.
Yes.
And I don't know why I've ended up. It's kind of a default position rather than a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second question is related to that. What unique Yorkshire qualities, if any, may have helped you in your success?
I don't think the Yorkshire qualities really. I mean, what are Yorkshire qualities? I don't know.
Tea.
What?
Yorkshire tea.
I don't know. That
Put the kettle on. Yeah.
Yorkshire qualities. I don't know.
No strength, no indomitable.
I think there's a lot of things that get you so far and then start being I think I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I think that's a bit of a Yorkshire thing.
There you go. Yep.
But then I might be doing Yorkshire down. I know quite a lot of Yorkshire people haven't got chips on their shoulders.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
anyway.
whatever it is or isn't, it's fabulous, and it comes across in your programs, and it touches all of our hearts, and you have done so much for everyone, especially with Gentleman Jack, but everything else. It's just a delight, and I can't tell you how much, after 5 years of waiting to sit on this stage with you, I have enjoyed this. So thank you, Sally. Yeah! Sally Wainwright. God bless you. There you go.